if you don't know yourself, well, guess what? You're going to look to everybody else to tell you who you are. Yep. So it's like, okay, because really think about this, right? Along the way, you're going to have to figure out who you are. And what that means is you have to undo some of those programs. Everything in your life up to this point has been programmed. You've been programmed. Everybody's been programmed. When you're born, right? You've been here like 2.5 seconds. Sometimes you're not even on the planet yet. You're still in utero. But let's say you've been here 2.5 seconds. You're given a name. You don't get to choose it. You're given maybe a political and religious affiliation. You don't get to choose it. This is how we do things in this world. You're given expectations. You've been here barely taking a breath. And like I said, sometimes you're in utero when this happens. So think about this. Then you're going to go to school. A lot of people go to school, depending on what country you're in. And now you're saying, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to know who you want to be when you grow up. This is what society wants you to be. Oh my God, that's a lot. That is a lot of programming. So you've got to say to yourself, now listen, you can do that. Like you can go down that path of following everybody. You can do what is expected of you. Sure. If that's who you're meant to be, right? Internally, it's not going to feel like a resistance. You're going to be like, okay, it's hard. I mean, life is hard. So you can't look for easy. I didn't say easy. It's going to be hard. Let it be hard. And so, you're like, okay, well, this feels kind of good. This is what I want to do. This feels good for my soul. Like I love it. Okay, beautiful. So you have the path, you know where that's going to be. But let's say you don't. Let's say you're like, oh gosh, oh my God, this doesn't feel good in my heart. This doesn't feel good in my soul. Not from an attachment position. You're going to know if it feels good when it's a feeling. I can't tell you what it's going to sound like. It's a feeling that says, wow, this feels good. Even if other people don't like it, it doesn't bother you. You're just like, oh, well, sorry, they don't understand it, but it feels good in my soul. But that means you're going to have to go sometimes against the grain of what the world wants you to do. Maybe you don't go to college. Maybe you start a new business. Maybe you go to a trade school. Maybe you, whatever. Maybe you don't get married. Maybe you don't have the kids. Maybe you don't. It's okay. It's beautiful. But if you keep following the masses and you keep living in somebody else's expectation, you're going to wake up at 80, 90 years old and go, what was my life even for? Right? Because as it is, we know life is temporary. Everything in your life is temporary. You're temporary. Life in general is temporary. So we know this. So if you know it's temporary, you don't want to wake up at 80 and 90 and being like, okay, I did the 2.5 kids thing. Okay, I got my degree in business and I started my own business and I did all of that, but I never really felt fulfilled. I also want you to lower your expectation of what you think that feels like. Okay, because I know you've heard the saying, if you love what you do, which I love what I do, you'll never work a day in your life. It's not necessarily true. You are going to work. You're just not going to, I don't want to call it hate it, but you're not going to, you're going to be able to say, okay, I have way better good days than I do not so great days, right? You have way better of that. So you'll know. But I also don't want you to go under the illusion that if you're doing something that you love or you're going to be with the person you love and all that stuff, that all of a sudden you have no problems. That's not real. You're going to have to pump your brakes there, right? So your expectations might be a little much too, because your expectations can do that to you. So this is why you have to understand, yes, you're still going to work. You're just doing whatever it is. Listen, everybody isn't meant to have their own business. Don't glorify it, because I have my own business and it's beautiful. And it has a lot of scary parts to it, right? Because it's just me, right? And so you have to understand there's always going to be a yin and yang. So don't glorify, if you're like, well, I don't want to do the 9-to-5 thing. Okay, cool. Well, starting your own business doesn't just make all of that, the stress disappear. It doesn't. So you got to understand that it's got to feel good for your soul, and it can't be based just in material things. Can't be based in money. Can't be based in what you think is going to make you feel better. No. It is a feeling of purpose, but it may not, you can't just go, okay, I'm going to do this. My purpose is to be a doctor. That's my purpose. Stop doing that. Because then if it doesn't work or you don't like it, you're going to be like, well, that's my purpose. You've convinced yourself that that's your purpose. But you can't do that. If you've lost yourself along the way, or maybe you never even knew yourself, and that's okay. That's why I exist. Book a session with your girl. I got you. Let's start to unbox it. You can't always do it by yourself. Can't always do it off of one podcast, off of one YouTube, off of one short form video. You can't always do it that way. All right. But until you start to realize who you are, you're always going to be living a fake version of yourself, a fictitious version of yourself that people are falling in love with or people liking that really isn't even you. They're falling in love with like a fake version of who you are. And sometimes you convince yourself, well, I guess this is just who I am. You know, have you ever heard somebody go, this is how I was raised? That just means that they are just complicit and compliant in not trying to make the effort to change that. And some people, and it is okay to be okay at status quo. Like if you're like, okay, I'm doing it. It's not miserable. It's not great. It's just fine. Because by the way, life isn't always going to be like, whoa, over the top amazing. It's just not. So you got to be okay with the mundane too, but don't just settle for that, right? You're going to have to take the high times and the good times, right? Because high times and good times, high times and low times, because if you don't, you're going to keep seeking this. And then if you don't have this sort, it's kind of like having a viral video on as a creator. I've had multiple viral videos on my short forms. It's fine. It's beautiful. It's bigger outreach. It doesn't change my world, right? So you got to understand if you have a viral video or you have a good business week, not everything is going to reach this level. So you're going to have to temper your expectations, which is why you've got to find out who you are. You've got to do the mundane things on the days that aren't so fabulous. You got to show up for yourself. And it's easier to do that when you start knowing that you're showing up for you. You're not just showing up for other people. And when you show up for you, you're stronger for other people. It's not the other way around. You're not strong for other people. And then you're like, whoa, look at me. No. You've got to be your first priority. So you got to sit and say, okay, what are some beliefs right now, paper to pen, preferably in the negative journal or even just in a separate piece of paper. How am I living my life right now? Okay. Break that down. How am I living my life right now? What are areas I want to change? And am I changing them for me? Not am I changing them to please somebody else? That's the caveat right there. Are you doing it to save your marriage? Well, maybe you don't want to be in that marriage anymore. Are you doing it because mom wants you to do it? You don't have to. Let her be disappointed. You know, that's the thing is you've got to stop putting yourself here and start putting yourself here, because then the relationships that you form or that you have around you will matter, it'll create longevity. It will create, listen, it's not all going to be happy. It's not all going to be sunshine and roses, but it's going to create you're going to surround yourself with the people that are going to serve your best and highest good. In turn, you're going to serve their best and highest good. But you're going to want to break down what are the belief systems you have? What are your political, religious, life beliefs? Do you really align with those, or are you aligning with them because that's what the family wants you to do? Are you aligning with those because that's what society wants you to do? Be okay with forging your own path and be compassionate with yourself, because you may have never done this before. You may have been programmed and told who you are, what you are, how you're supposed to live, what it means, no. I just told you life itself is temporary and hard. So why make it harder by trying to please people that will never be pleased because they're not pleased with themselves? Now, this goes for you. If you're not into the self-love and you're not working on that, then you're going to start comparing yourself. You're going to start sitting in judgment. Go it as a teachable moment, not a judgmental moment. Right? Be self-aware, lower your ego and go, ooh, I got some work to do. Great. And you should have work to do for the rest of your natural born life. You should never hit a space where you're like, got it, finished, done. No, you should never be there. You always want to enhance who you are, but then pause and celebrate the things that you've accomplished. So that's balance. You got to have yin with yang, but you got to have that middle ground. You got to have that balance. When you achieve that balance, now we're getting to where you want to be. And it's okay. Sometimes you're going to have to be isolated. Sometimes you're going to have to just cut all ties. Maybe. You don't have to get there now. Let's not be dramatic. but you don't know. You don't get to choose on bringing who you want because they may not be in your best and highest good. Always remember that. Sometimes the things you want may not be in your best interest, and make sure that you want them not to fulfill you, but because it is part of that growth. So ask yourself, who am I and what do I believe in? And what do I not believe in? And now let's unbox it and start fresh.